All right. Well, I think the casting choices were about perfect. Really played the strengths there in the first act of this. I'm actually really curious, Peter's sitting right over here, that he threw the sword at Malchus and cut off his ear. That's actually even more impressive. I always thought it was rather pathetic because obviously Peter aimed for the head and missed. Thank God he missed. That would have been a bigger miracle. But you actually threw it, I understand. Well, actually, that's not bad, you know. That's precise. Anyways, really appreciate seeing so many familiar faces up there playing all these different roles. Everyone you saw up there is a minute man and a minute woman coming in and taking on their part. Many of them never saw that script until they got into the studio, and they did a fantastic job. And thanks, COVID. That's right. We're going to blame everything on COVID. Your taxes go up, it's COVID. You can't find toilet paper, it's COVID. Okay, that one was COVID. Or more accurately, that was people afraid of COVID. So I was told I had a sermonette today, and I thought long and hard about that this morning, and cut out 2 of the 42 pages I had, so that's how I say, well, it's going to be shorter. I'm not going to go through the whole story. I suspect that most of us still know the story, although it's perhaps a little bit less common than it used to be. But something struck me this week as I thought about this, and that is in life, all of our lives, we're told that if you just follow the rules, if you just try to be a good person, if you just work hard, if you just choose good friends, then you'll be okay. That's what society wants of you. And yet, as I contemplate this story of Jesus, it's like this guy did that, and they killed him. And it just makes me question, does the world want good people? Not whether the world deserves good people. Do we really want good people? And you know, they say that they do, but this is what the world does to good people. You know, Jesus, just before the crucifixion, said in John 15, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first, which is not exactly the comfort you want Jesus to say. You know, you want him to be like, you're going to be fine, don't worry, everything's going to go okay in life. You know, I'll make sure you don't get in the car accidents and get hurt or get sick or anything like that. But it's just kind of like, hey, if you find yourself being hated by the world, just remember it hated me first. And it's like, well, that's comfort, isn't it? That's comfort. Wow, we're not the first to be hated. And then he goes on, he says, if they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. This is what it means when you say that the servant is not greater than the master. You're not going to have it better than he had it if you want to follow in his footsteps. The world wants you to be good, but not too good. I think this is why we tend to choose friends who are morally similar to ourselves. Right? You didn't see me hanging with Mother Teresa. Because I'd probably be sitting on a chair on my phone playing Angry Birds or something while she's like helping the destitute in Calcutta. Angry Birds, you know, I mean, it's an older game. I don't know. There's newer games now, but I don't know what game everybody is playing now. There's no kind of like sensation like it was like Bejeweled and Candy Crush and Angry Birds. We'll go through this some other time. Anyways, you know, I wouldn't look great. I'd be like reading a book and she'd be like helping somebody who's starving to death. Like I just wouldn't look good standing next to her, sitting next to her. So that's why I don't hang out with Mother Teresa, or I didn't. You know, I think we tend to choose friends who are morally similar to ourselves. And that's why I choose friends like Matt and Steve. So I don't feel bad about my life choices. We don't tend to choose friends who are so much better than ourselves, okay? That's my point here, because then we would look bad. So, you know, and the truth is, in the Gospels, nobody looked good standing next to Jesus. Nobody could think more highly of themselves when they stood next to Jesus. Nobody walked away from those situations thinking, hey, I'm better than I thought I was. If anything, you were reminded that you're not as good as you think you are. there's something about that. I mean, when you analyze these encounters, when you study them, you realize, this rich young ruler, just to give one example, thought he was doing well. He's keeping the law. He's doing all these things. And Jesus, just identifies with pinpoint accuracy. Yeah, but are you helping the poor? Just like that one weakness this guy had in his life, that one overlooked thing in his life. But are you doing that? And it says that the rich young ruler walked away sad. Or sometimes the Pharisees would grumble among themselves. Who is this who has the power to forgive sins or pretends they have that power? And Jesus would hear them, or he'd read their hearts, and he would know. And then he would say out loud, he'd respond out loud to what they were thinking or saying quietly. Like you couldn't be around Jesus and walk away with your conceit intact. Yeah. It's like he just kind of held up a mirror to who we are underneath all of the moral makeup that we put on, all of the preening and posturing that we do in order to make ourselves more acceptable to ourselves. We live lives of sin management. We repackage and rebrand our sin so it's not really ugly anymore. It's quirky or cute. Are you impatient? No, you're just really, really talented, and there's just so much you got to get done in life, and we understand. Do you succumb to rage? No, you're just a passionate person. Right? Like we find ways to kind of rebrand these things, and then we feed ourselves these stories so that it's not really so bad. It's not really a character defect. It's not a moral failing. It's just, something a lot less harmless. There's certain faults that we're proud of. What can I say? I'm just a people person. I just love making everybody happy. And it's like, well, yeah, but establish some boundaries. Well, what can I do? I just like pleasing everybody. You know what I mean? You should establish boundaries. That's a healthy thing to do. Or maybe you're the opposite way and you just steamroll everybody. And it's like, hey, I got to get things done. It's like, yeah, but you just broke 3 people's feet on the way to getting it done. That probably wasn't a nice way of going about it. Well, I got to get things done. You know what I mean? We kind of find ways to repackage these things so it doesn't seem so bad. These are ways in which we manage our condition. And then we have these unspoken pacts with each other, right? I won't call out the thing you're rebranding if you don't call out the thing I'm rebranding, and we can all get along just fine. But when we stand next to Jesus, we are made aware of what we're doing. When Mary anointed the feet of Jesus at that dinner party that Jesus was at, Judas spoke up, said, "Why wasn't this perfume sold and given to the poor?" And then I love it because John puts that little parenthetical note in there. It says Judas didn't say this because he actually cared about the poor. He said this because he wanted that money to be put in the group's bank account, which he had control of, so he could siphon off a little bit, right? So it's like even Judas gets called out in that moment. Maybe not out loud in that instant, but John makes sure that comment does not get passed by without the truth being known about the person who made it. Jesus had this habit of seeing right through us. When Pilate at the trial boasts that I have your life, Jesus, that whether you live or die, that power is in my hands. What does Jesus say? Actually, the power that you have in your hand, just keep in mind, Pilate, whatever it is that you have, it was given to you. You're not at the top of this food chain, buddy. What you have has been delegated to you. You're lower down. You're a servant of somebody else. Keep that in mind. He had this habit of seeing right through us. And I have to ask, just as a brief aside, if God is a figment of our wish-fulfilling imaginations, then why would we invent a God next to whom we look so poor? I'd rather like the Greek gods, because I don't stack up too badly against Zeus and Persephone. When you read about what they did, I'm not so bad. Why would we invent a God if that's the business we're in the God inventing business? Why would we invent a God next to whom we look so poor? Just as an aside. So standing next to Jesus, it holds a mirror up to us. We don't really like it when our friends are so much better than us, or when anybody is so much better than us. We tend to throw stones. We tend to throw stones at those people who make a claim to be free from corruption, to be free from the faults that the rest of us have. You know, if a politician gets up and says, I'm not corrupt, all I care about is the people, like our instinctive reaction is, yeah, right, whatever. And then sometimes there's people who they do walk around doing good things and saying good things, and with a critical eye we turn to them and be like, yeah, but what's really going on here? What if we examine their bank accounts? I'm sure they got something going on in the shadows that they don't want us, we can't accept it. We can't accept it. We don't want to believe it. And I think this is exactly what we see playing out in the life of Jesus. Like he's got a devil, they said. I mean, this is the dude healing the blind and the sick. He's got a devil, really? Like that's your best response, right? But they can't bring themselves to accept that he might be the first and only truly good person that ever walked the face of the earth. Because if that's true, then it makes all the rest of us look bad. And I kind of like my mess. He held this mirror up to us, and it's something we want to break. We want to break the mirror. Well, after a conversation with Jesus, this woman in Samaria went to her friends and said something that I've always found very puzzling. She said, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did." And she was excited when she said it. Why would that be exciting? If your spouse, significant other, family member, friend, knew everything you ever thought and did, do you think it would improve their perception of you? Probably not. So why is this woman so happy about that? Wow. Why is it good news? We spend a good chunk of our emotional energy guarding the gate of our lives because some people are allowed in a little bit further than other people. Some people are safer to let in. Very few people make it past the suburbs of your life. Some make it in a little bit further, but nobody makes it downtown. Nobody gets into that inner self where those thoughts are before they get to the filter. Nobody knows everything about you. We don't even know everything about ourselves, turns out. Sometimes you just say something, you're like, where'd that come from? Nobody makes it downtown. And yet, Jesus made it downtown. He knew this woman. He knew everything she had ever done. And instead of terrifying her, because, hey, why else would we guard the gates and keep people out of those sensitive areas of our lives? Instead of terrifying her, it liberated her. That's interesting. So I think this woman's reaction teaches us two things. First, deep down inside, we really want to be known as human beings. We really do want to let people in. We really do want to not guard the gates and just let people drive downtown to know us how we truly are. And that's what we want. We want to be known. We're told in our society through music and movies and novels and other things that it's okay to be yourself, that it's good to be authentic. And yet, if you spend any time on Facebook or Twitter, never has it been easier to bully somebody or shut somebody down or attack somebody online for being themselves. So you have this kind of bifurcated reality that we live in where it's like, just be yourself, just be your true self, just speak your mind, be authentic, but at the same time, you've never had so much pressure also to not be yourself. You need to kind of conform over here or else somebody on the internet is going to be upset about that. And if you've ever been attacked on the internet, it is a profoundly wonderful feeling. You know, you just tweet something dumb 10 years ago, you lose your job today. So despite our public acknowledgement that we want to be known, we're also very, 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 very scared to be known. Like, we want to be known, but we have to guard the gates because we're afraid that if people know what I'm really like, the things I really thought, the things I really did, then they wouldn't accept me anymore. They wouldn't want me anymore. They wouldn't like what they see. And probably with some good reason, right? So that brings me to the second thing I think we can learn from this woman's reaction. It's not enough to be known. We want to be known and accepted. And this is why the Samaritan woman sees her encounter with Jesus as good news worth telling other people about. I think if Jesus had reacted to her by saying, yeah, you've had 5 husbands, lady, and so you're not off to a good start in life, are you? I had a judge, I had to go to traffic court one time in Chattanooga, and I got a ticket for speeding. It was a really awkward affair because I was driving towards Walmart, and it was around Easter, and I had my truck full of all sorts of stuff. You know, at Southern, where I went to school, they had the Sunrise Pageant. I don't know if you guys are aware of. It's really a treat if you could see it once in your life, where they just kind of transformed the whole campus into the final week of Jesus' life, and it's just amazing. Anyways, I was a Roman soldier. Most years I was a Roman soldier. And I had a sword. And so anyways, when the officer pulled me over, he asked if I had any weapons. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't just carry weapons in my car. And then he shined his light in the back and saw the sword. Then we all had to get out and get searched. And then he found paintball guns. And I never thought of those as weapons. So, you know, a bunch of other things in there too we weren't going to get into. So I had to go see a judge. And the judge said, you're not off, I don't know what I was, probably 17 or something, and he said, or no, I guess I'd be like 19 maybe, and he said, you're not off to a very good start, are you? And I wanted to tell him, you know, I worked construction, and I've been driving a backhoe on the road since I was about 15, so actually I'm off to a good start, because, you know, I could have like literally crushed a car if I would have hit him with that, so, you know, I didn't tell him that, right? You just keep your mouth shut. But you know why? Because something I did became known. And the person who knew about it, the judge, then proceeded to tell me, you're not off to a good start. That doesn't encourage me to want to open up, right? Like, that's why we're afraid to let the things we do become known. Because it seems like in life, there's always that person to be like, you're wrong, you're a terrible person, how could you even think that? What's wrong with you? You're messed up, man. You know, like, and so we don't want to, we're afraid to be known. We want to be known, but we're afraid to be known. And I think this is the difference that Jesus makes. He showed that he knows this woman and doesn't care about the things she's done. He loves her anyway. And I feel like this woman's excitement about that really just sums up the entire mission and purpose of Jesus. He came down here to know us. He didn't ask us to find our way to him. He came down here to get to know us, and then but we're afraid, right? We're in the garden, we run away when we hear his voice, even though he's chasing after us. He wants to meet us, he wants to know us, he wants to encounter us and know who we truly are. But we're afraid of that encounter, and so we run. Well, we can't run when he comes down, you know, in the flesh, right? We can't run from him then. We're there, we're encountering him, we're bumping up against him. We're not looking good as a result. But this woman discovered, because she hung around and talked with him just a little bit, she wasn't there to posture, she wasn't there to, you know, try to preserve her power in this world or anything. She was just talking to this interesting person, finds out that he knows her and accepts her anyway. And there was nothing in the world that was more exciting for this woman than that fact. Because I think that's one of our deepest human desires. We want to be known. And when we're known, we're afraid, though, that we're going to be rejected. But instead, Jesus accepts us. In Khalil Gibran's collection of short stories called Jesus, the Son of Man, it's basically a series of characters we find in the Gospels, and he kind of steps into their shoes and shares their own recollections of their own encounter with Jesus and stuff, and it's interesting. But in one of his stories about Mary Magdalene, he has her say, "I was dead. I was a woman who had divorced her own soul. I belonged to all men and to none. They called me harlot and a woman possessed of 7 devils. I was cursed. I was envied." But then she encounters Jesus in the story. And Gibran writes, "He looked at me, and the noontide of his eyes was upon me, and he said, 'You have many lovers, and yet I alone love you. All men love you for themselves. I love you for yourself.'" And I think Gibran really captures what we're saying here, that he knew this woman and loved her anyway. That through Jesus, you can be known for who you are, and that's okay. The parts of you that you're afraid to open up to other human beings, even well-meaning human beings, even human beings that love you, that part of it you can open up to him. When we stand next to this Jesus, we realize that disguising ourselves in the ways that we do in order to be able to look at each other, look at ourselves in the mirror, it's exhausting. Putting on that moral makeup and posturing and taking your positions that you should take so you can look good and all that is exhausting. Only through Jesus can you be loved for who you are. Because the reality is, if people know who you are, first of all, nobody knows you perfectly. Nobody knows you fully and completely. And therefore, they can't love you fully and completely because you can only love what you know. So only through Jesus can you be loved for who you are. And once you experience these things, you can run and say with joy, "Come and see a man who told me everything I've ever done," and say it with a smile on your face, not with a sense of fear. And I think that story with the woman at the well encapsulates who Jesus is. Because I think this is the Jesus we see at the cross. He's hanging there because he knows what we've done. And he's hanging there because he loves us anyway. And that's what we're celebrating. Father, I just want to thank you for this moment. As we finish up the service with the second act, I just want to thank you that we are known, that you have pursued us, that you've chased after us, that you haven't left us in our wandering. And I'm especially grateful that you love us anyway. Amen.